Welcome to class today, pre-calculus students. Should be Tuesday, August 20th. So welcome to class. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're staying up on your videos and your homework. Very, very important that you do that. You're going to hear this all year long. I try to make these videos as quick as possible, yet as thorough as possible. And I hope that's a help to you so you're not sitting in front of the computer listening to me teach for a tremendous amount of time. And I want you to focus a lot of your energy on your homework, and that's where you learn, make mistakes, find your mistakes, and improve. Out of 3 students, I've had 1 person turn their quiz in by Monday, which is, of course, yesterday. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just letting you know. If any of you other students emailed it to me, I did not get it. Now, if you put it in the snail mail, that's totally fine. If you're going to bring it by my house, today, Tuesday, that's fine. But I'm just letting you know the quiz was due yesterday on Monday. And to the 1 student who did turn yours in, I will be grading that today and hopefully somehow communicating to you about what your grade was. All right? So I just want to remind you of that. We will have a review sheet on Thursday. Friday's video will just be a video of the review sheet helping you get ready for your test, and then we'll have a test next Monday. Please dig deep now and give me your undivided attention for the rest of this video. I have some really important information to review from Algebra 2. So here we go. Yesterday we looked at factoring trinomials that had a lead coefficient of 1. Today we're looking at factoring trinomials, and I'm sorry, my pen is not working for some reason. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. There we go. Today we're looking at factoring trinomials that do not or without a lead coefficient of 1. Okay? Today's lesson is R.4, Review Chapter Section 4, and the date is the 20th. All right. Now, you can write this next stuff down, or you can just watch. That's up to you. Do you see these 2 different trinomials right here? If I asked you to factor this, hopefully by now, again, you can take notes or just watch. It's totally up to you. If I asked you to factor this, the first thing you would do is you would pull out what's common, and you see that 2 goes into everything. So you would pull out a 2. Now let's just stop there. We'll come back to this in a second. Now let's come over here. If I asked you to factor this trinomial, you would pull out what's common, and again it would be a 2, and you'd be left over with 3x squared plus 4x minus 7. Now, after you've pulled out what's common, men, do you see the difference between these 2 expressions? Please look carefully. If you don't see this, you're going to be lost the rest of the video. Do you see this trinomial right here that's left over after you pulled this 2 out? Do you notice how you had a lead coefficient of 1? Do you see that? Well, that's the factoring we did yesterday, isn't it? And then you would go on from there and try to factor it. The ones we're going to do today are not going to have a lead coefficient of 1. In other words, they're going to have a lead coefficient of something other than 1. In this case, we have a lead coefficient of 3. Well, Mr. Earhart, they both started off without a lead coefficient of 1. That's true. We started off with a 2 right here and a 6. But remember, what's the first thing you always do in factoring? Pull out what's common. And after you pull out what's common, you then look and see what you have left over for a trinomial. So always pull out what's common first and then look. You're going to have trinomials that have a lead coefficient of 1, or you're not going to have trinomials that have a lead coefficient of 1. Okay? So hopefully you see the difference between these 2. One has a lead coefficient of 1 and 1 does not. Okay, let's continue on. Now the first thing we're going to do is write down some steps. Again, you'll probably have to pause the video because I'm not going to stay on this page for long. I'm just going to read them and go on. When it comes to factoring trinomials that do not have a lead coefficient of 1, use these steps. Now they're going to sound like Greek, but trust me, these will work. Number 1, you always factor out common factors. We know that. Now step 2 is going to sound weird. I'll explain it to you later. You list the factors of the product of the lead coefficient and the last term. I'll explain that later. Step 3, you rewrite the middle term. How? With 2 terms. And then step 4, factor by using the grouping method. Mr. Earhart, what's the grouping method? Well, that's the method we learned last week. I think on Thursday or Friday, I think it was Friday, we learned how to factor using the grouping method, okay? I'm going to move on. You might want to pause the video and copy these down, and then go ahead and continue. The video today, by the way, is very short. We have 3 examples. Do you see what I'm trying to do, men? I'm trying to teach you. I won't always be able to do this. For example, tomorrow's video, Wednesdays, is going to be really long. I'm going to tell you right now it's going to be long. That's just how it is, okay? But when I can teach this quickly, I'm going to do that to help you get into your homework and get to work, okay? All right, here we go. Let's factor this first problem. Take some really good notes and pay attention. Step 1 says factor out the common factor. Now I see a 3, a 10, and an 8. I know of no number that goes into those 3 numbers evenly. Now I look at my variables. I have 2 x's here and x here, but look, I have no x right here with this term, so I cannot pull out any x's. So step 1 is done. There's nothing common to pull out. Now here's what step 2 says. Step 2 says list out the factors of the product of the first term and the last term. Okay, now here's what that means. Do you want that in English and not Greek? Okay, here's what it means. You take this first number here, and in your head you multiply it by this number here, and you write it right over here. Let me show you again. You take your first number here. Let me stop. You only use this method when you don't have a lead coefficient of 1. Look, if you didn't have a 3 right there, then you wouldn't use the method I'm about ready to show you. You would use yesterday's method where you list out all the factors of 8 and then circle the right group and then factor. Do you see that? But we have a lead coefficient of 3, so we have to factor these differently. So we take our first number, multiply it by this number, and put it right over here. So 3 times negative 8, and notice it is a negative 8, gives you a negative 24. Now we're going to list out all the factors of negative 24 and see which one of those adds up to my middle term right here. Well, I could list them all out. 1 times 24, 1 times 24. 2 times 12, 2 times 12. 3 times 8, 3 times 8. 4 times 6, 4 times 6. And actually, I'm trying to think real quick. Did I make a mistake here? No, I did not. Okay. I could list them all out, but really to save time, we did that so much yesterday. I'm just going to go ahead and put the ones we're going to use. 4 times 6, 4 times 6. It would be, no, and that's not right. I apologize. Sorry, guys. Everyone makes mistakes. I do apologize. Sorry about that. It would be 2 and 12. So 2 times 12, 2 times 12. Now, it's a negative 24, so we want a positive times a negative and negative times a positive. Now, one of these group adds up to a negative 10, and it's this group right here. Now, let's go back and look at our steps, shall we? Step 2, list the factors of the product of the lead coefficient and the last term. Pretend that we did that. Pretend I listed out 1 times 24, 2 times 12, yada, yada, all the way down, okay? Look what step 3 says. Rewrite the middle term. Do you see that? Rewrite the middle term with 2 terms. So, see this middle term right here, this negative 10x? I'm going to rewrite it. And see this positive 2? I'm going to put a positive 2x. And see this negative 12? I'm going to put a negative 12x. Mr. Earhart, why'd you put an x there? Because what was with the 10 right here? The 10 had a what with it? An x. So because there's an x there, when I rewrite this middle term, I put a positive 2x. I got the positive 2 from right over here, and a negative 12x. I got the negative 12 from right over here, and an x. Now bring down your first term, which is 3x squared, and bring down your last term, which is negative 8. Cool. Guys, look at this. Cool. Look what we have. We have 4 terms. Remember what we learned last week? Last week we learned how to factor a 4-term expression by what method? The grouping method. Remember the grouping method? So now we simply factor this using the grouping method. Okay, remember what to do? You look at your first 2 terms right here. Forget these. Totally forget these for a second, okay? You look at your first 2 terms. What goes into 3 and 2 evenly? Nothing. Okay, look at your x's. You have 2 x's here and 1 x here. So because of that, we know that we can pull 1 x out of the first two terms. Now, x times 3x is 3x squared, and x times 2 is 2x. There you go. Now, don't forget what I taught you last week. Whenever there's a negative sign here, that means you're definitely going to pull out a negative down here, always. So put a negative sign. Now, what number goes into 12 and 8 evenly? What's the largest number? 4. Is there an x in both terms so I can pull an x out? No, there's not. So negative 4 times 3x. Let's see if that works. Negative 4 times 3x is negative 12. Now, negative 4 times positive 2. Negative 4 times positive 2 is negative 8. There we go. And look, your parentheses match. So now that your parentheses match, we have 3x plus 2. And once you pull that out, you're left over with x minus 4. X minus 4. There, you did it. You factored a trinomial that did not have a lead coefficient of 1. It had a lead coefficient of 3. All right, let's move on to the next problem. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a shot. Now, first of all, you factor out the common factor. What number goes into 12, 10, and 8 evenly? Well, the largest number that I know of is 2. Notice I have 3 x's here, 2 x's here, and 1 x here. So the most x's I can pull out would be 1. So I'm going to pull out 1x. Now, let's see what we're left over with. 2x times 6x squared would give me 12x cubed. And 2x times 5x would give me, sorry guys, hold on one second. Get a little drink of water. Okay, sorry about that. Now 2x times 5x would be 10x squared, and then 2x times negative 4 is 8x. There we go. We pulled out what's common. Now look at what you're left over with. Are you left over with a trinomial with a lead coefficient of 1 or without a lead coefficient of 1? Well, obviously it's without a lead coefficient of 1. So remember what we do. Step 2, we take the product of this first number and the last number, and we write it right over here. So 6 times negative 4 would be negative 24. And we list out all the multiples. I'll go ahead and do it real quick this time. 1 times 24, 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, 4 times 6. There. And then you want a positive times a negative, and a negative times a positive, and you continue that pattern all the way down through here. I'm not going to do that. But anyways, when we get down to these numbers right here, positive, negative, negative, positive, the group that combines or adds up to a positive 5 would be this group right here. So those are the two numbers you want to use. So look at your steps. You should have them written down in front of you. Step 3 says you rewrite the middle term. Now see this 2x? I'm just going to go ahead and bring it down in my final answer right now so I don't forget to do it. Plus, now I don't have to worry about it, okay? So it's not in the way. Now, what I taught you to do is replace the middle term. So instead of putting positive 5x, I'm going to put negative 3x. Got the negative 3 from right here, and a positive 8x. Why did I use the x? Because what term do you have here? An x term. All right. Now, bring down your first term, 6x squared. Bring down your last term, negative 4. And now the last step, factor by grouping. Factor by grouping. So what's the largest number that goes into 3 and 6? Well, 3 is. I can pull out 1x. So 3x times 2x is 6x squared. And 3x, now be careful here, 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Now look at your last two terms. What's the largest number that goes into 4 and 8? Well, 4 is. And I cannot pull an x out because there's no x with this term here. So 4 times 2x. 4 times 2x is 8x. And 4 times negative 1. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Your parentheses match. I'm going to jump down here right beside the 2x. I'm going to put 2x minus 1. And then I'm left over with 3x plus 4. And there we go. Look at that. We factored another problem. Good job. One more and the video's over. That's pretty short. And I think what you need to do is get into your homework and watch the homework video and practice, practice, practice. I think I've given you 12 of those that you have to do. All right. Last problem in your notes. I know of no number that goes into 25, 30, and 9 evenly. Now let's look at your variables. There's there's an x here and an x here, but no x here, so I cannot pull out an x. There's a y here and a y here, but no y here, so I cannot pull out a y. So there's actually nothing common that I can factor out. So I move on to step 2. Step 2 says, since I do not have a lead coefficient of 1, I take this first number, multiply it by the last number, and write it right over here. And 25 times 9 would give me 225, a positive. Now, you do understand something, students. To list out all the factors of 225 would take such a long time. So, I mean, use common sense. You know that 1 times 225 is never going to combine up to 30. So I started jumping ahead quickly. 5 tens, and I got to this right here. 15 times 15, and I wrote it twice. 15 times 15. Positive times a positive, negative times a negative. One of those groups adds up to a negative 30, and it's that group right there. So remember what to do? You rewrite the middle term with 2 terms. Now look what I put. What is your middle term? It's an xy term. Do you see that? So I've got to put negative 15 xy. Then look over here, your next number, it's a negative 15. So negative 15 xy. Pretty cool. And now bring down your 9y squared. And then bring down your 25x squared. And now we're ready to roll. Let's factor out what's common in the first 2 terms. What's the biggest number that goes into 25 and 15? 5 does. And I cannot pull out a y. There's not a y in this term, but I can pull out an x. Now be careful with your multiplication here. 5x times 5x would give you 25x squared. And then see if this works. I'm going to put negative 3y. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15, and x times y is xy. So there we go. Now look at these 2 terms. Remember, when this first term right here is negative, then you're going to pull out a negative sign. Please don't forget that. That's a really common mistake that students make. All right, pull out your negative sign. Now what's the largest number that goes into 15 and 9? Well, 3 does. Now you cannot pull out an x because there's no x in this term, but you can pull out a y. So negative 3y times 5x. I think that'll work. Let's see. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Y times x is xy. Now watch your signs. You want a positive 9. There's no way you're going to put a positive 3. A negative times a positive is a negative. That's not going to work, okay? You're going to have to put a negative 3y, because a negative 3 times a negative 3 is a positive 9, and y times y is y squared. And now look, your parentheses match. 5x minus 3y, and then what are you left over with? 5x minus 3y. And by the way, notice your parentheses match. That'll happen sometimes. This is a great answer. But another way to write your answer, whenever your 2 parentheses match like this in your final answer, some books will want you to write your answer like this. Either way with me is acceptable. I really don't mind, okay? There's your homework. 12 problems, like I said. There's a homework video to help you. Please do your homework. Please work hard at this. And call or email if you guys have any questions, all right?